I don't know about you, but I didn't sleep a wink last night. Our Champions League semi-final is here, and while regardless of what happens tonight, it'll only be half-time, we've got a massive opportunity in front of our own fans to, at the very least, set ourselves on our way. It's our biggest game in over 15 years. Not even the great Arsene Wenger managed to crown the Arsenal champions of Europe. That's what's at stake here if we can progress to the final. Summon the spirit of '94 when our pal, the late Kevin Campbell, sunk PSG in the Cup Winners' Cup semi-final.
Dixon looking to measure up a cross, gets one in. It's a goal there! It's Kevin Campbell!
There's no doubt they're an improved side since we met earlier this season, but take encouragement from the manner in which we cruised past them back in October.
The game to be won here as Leandro Trossard comes charging forward. He's got Martinelli on the outside, checks back on the inside, into the box, he goes towards Kai Havertz, and Arsenal have their breakthrough! And it's the German Kai Havertz! Saka's delivery, Martinelli tries to get something on it, it's gone all the way through, and into the back of the net, Arsenal double their lead!
Expect Emirates Stadium to be resplendent, banners and tifos on display. It'll be a sea of red and white as we get behind the boys, hoping they can replicate what our women achieved at the weekend. It'll be a cacophony of noise. Make sure you do your bit. Sing at the top of your lungs. Applaud every effort. Roar the team on at every opportunity. And as Mikel Arteta requested, kick every ball with the guys. It's been a season of challenges. At times it's been tough, but having thrashed Real Madrid in the quarterfinals, anything feels possible. Belief is everything. At this stage, concentration too is key. Let's seize the moment, grab the opportunity with both hands, because we are Arsenal FC. Welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. It is match day. What a huge day it is. What a huge night we've got ahead of us. Oh, my word. I mean, how do you mentally cope with days like this? I'd love to hear from you guys because I am really, really struggling. Man, I was lying in bed at about 2:30 in the morning, just looking at the ceiling and thinking about PSG's midfield and how, we go about taking them on. Do we play around them? Do we play through them? Do we try and play over the top of them? But then we don't have, it's unlikely that Mikel Merino is going to play up top because we need him in midfield. Therefore, are we able to play over the top of them? Who does that role? Who does that job? So much to unpack, so much to think about. And this isn't going to be a very long episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner because we've done so much content around this match. If you go back to Friday's episode, we sat down with Adrian Clark and we had a great conversation about some of the key battles that we were expecting to unfold in front of our eyes on this Tuesday night. We also put together another piece that came out on Sunday where we looked at some of the key things to look out for. So for me, it is more an emotional preview today than anything else. We are going to talk a little bit about the two starting 11s. I'm going to share with you guys a prediction, but I want to talk to you a little bit about the kind of mood around the game, because obviously I was at the Emirates Stadium yesterday for the press conferences. PSG's open training session took place. I say open training session. They knock the ball around for 15 minutes before they kick all the journos out. So I guess it's good for kind of gauging who's available and who's not. If there's a player missing, it normally means they're not going to be available for the game, as we've kind of seen. From an Arsenal perspective, good news, because earlier in the day when the Gunners trained at the Sober Realty Training Center, both Mikel Merino and Ben White took part in the session. Both of them were available to Mikel Arteta. There is no Ricardo Calafiori still, and as far as I'm aware, there's no Jorginho either. So, yeah, that's the kind of team news from our front. And I guess the debate then comes around, who starts and where. Do you stick Leandro Trossard up front and bring Merino back into the midfield? Are you so desperate to see Merino continue up top that you will be willing to try something else in the middle of the park? Can you afford to tinker with the middle of the park too much, given PSG's strength in that area of the park? And there's so much to think about, so much to unpack. I don't envy any of the managers in this position, because they know that, one bad decision when in a game that's going to be decided by, you feel, the finest of margins, it can really be a setback, or it could be a difference maker. How brave do you want to be? Do you want to take those gambles? Do you want to take those risks? Fascinating dynamic, really, really is. A big good morning to everybody joining us in the live chat. Great to see you guys with us. Thank you for being here. I know there's been a lot of Arsenal PSG content, but you guys still keep coming back, which is amazing. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Leave a like on the video if you haven't done so already. And if you're listening on audio, please do leave us a review. All of that stuff really, really does help. Shall we get into yesterday then? We'll do that first. Let's talk a little bit about how it went down at Emirates Stadium. So the first press conference was Vitinha, obviously PSG's midfield maestro these days, a player who did have a brief spell in England at Wolverhampton Wanderers. Talked yesterday about how he learnt quite a bit actually from his time in English football. He said that at the time it was frustrating, and at the time he didn't feel like it was a positive experience. But looking back on it now, as he's developed over time, he realizes that actually it kind of helped shape him into the player that he is today. And what a fantastic player he's developed into. He took issue with a question put to him about PSG's perceived lack of physicality in midfield. And I think this is a really interesting point, because there's been a lot made of this, hasn't there, in the build up to this game. A lot of people have looked at their midfield, which we think is going to be João Neves, Vitinha, Fabian Ruiz, and they've gone really good technical players, but do they have the physical capabilities of Rice, of Odegaard? Obviously, Partey's not available, and so it's probably going to be Merino. And I think people have felt, generally speaking, that Arsenal actually can gain an advantage by just being that little bit more physical in the middle of the park. And that's something that, as good as this PSG midfield are, they might struggle to cope with. Vitinha, as I say, he didn't like that question. He said, you guys said this when we played Liverpool, when we played Aston Villa, and we overcome them both. So he was very, very keen to make the point that, at least in his eyes, at least in the eyes of his teammates too, that is not really regarded as too big of an issue. It's something that I think commentators and people that are sort of covering the game and the coverage around the game seems to be very inclusive of as a discussion, but they obviously don't fear it that much. They're obviously not as worried and not as concerned about it as everybody else. So it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. Generally speaking, I thought he spoke really well. It was fascinating to listen to. And yeah, he's going to be bang up for this game, as I'm sure all their players will be, of course, going into this one. Then we had Luis Enrique, who was in a rotten mood. And I was a bit taken aback, I got to be honest, by Luis Enrique, because I thought he was clearly very, very agitated, was clearly very, very frustrated, felt as if there was a lot of negativity around his team. Obviously, they've had a sort of slight slump in terms of their results recently, but they're already Ligue 1 winners, and nobody really cares, I wouldn't imagine. At least those within the camp. Obviously, they don't want the standards to slip, and obviously you want to be in tip-top form going into a game like this one. But I think he was annoyed at the fact that so much was being made of some of those results, and he did fight back quite a bit in that press conference. He also was asked a question about whether or not he feels that the fact that they've overcome Premier League opposition before will help them in this tie. And he said, well, you know, people tell me that the Premier League is the best league in the world. And he said, I'm not sure I agree with that, which was interesting. And then he went on to say, look, you know, you'll have to ask Mikel Arteta if that's a thing, blah, blah, blah. And then the question was put back on him. Well, do you think the Premier League is the best league in the world then? And he sort of said, I'm not going to say anything, because if I do, you're going to criticize me. So he got his little slide dig in about the Premier League, about the standard of it, etc., about that maybe being blown out of proportion, etc., etc. He did all of that, but then he kind of declined the opportunity to really kind of stick the boot in, which I think was probably wise. Look, he was clearly in a bit of a mood. He was clearly a little bit frustrated by everything that was going on around his team and everything that was being said. And he had a couple of little bites at the French media in particular. So, yeah, interesting. Mikel Arteta was great yesterday, I thought, smiling ear to ear, really excited really positive. I asked him how you go about making sure that excitement doesn't develop into nerves over the course of sort of the 24 hours leading up to the game. And he just kept talking about preparation. So preparation is the key. If you prepare right, there's no reason for that to happen, is me paraphrasing, but basically what he said. Gabriel Martinelli came in as well. He was really good as well. I thought he had a really nice manner about him. He was laughing and joking, seemed pretty relaxed, did call this game the biggest game of his career, and rightly so. And I'm fascinated to see, of course, how he's going to get on. And we'll talk a little bit more about the specifics of that when we do the 2-11s. But listen, the mood around the place is one of anticipation, of excitement. We saw them putting up the cords to run this massive display / tifo thing that we've heard quite a bit about over the last few days. So that is all being prepared and in place. And I was just astonished. Like, I've not covered Champions League semi-finals before, not as a reporter. I've been to Champions League semi-finals before. I've been to a Champions League final on a couple of occasions, but not as a reporter. So what kind of really struck me yesterday was how many camera crews there were, how many different outlets had sent people over, even from countries that have nothing to do with either club. There was Spanish media there, there was German media there was Dutch media there. Like, it was just fascinating to me how, much attention a Champions League semi-final can kind of generate from all around the continent, because it's Europe's premier competition. And look, as I said in the intro, I think it's really important that we lap it up and we enjoy it as much as you can. I know there's going to be a lot of nerves, and I know there's going to be frustration if things don't go our way, but at least in the build-up, you've got to try and stay relaxed, and you've got to try your utmost to be positive, and remind yourself that this is an experience that not every football fan in the world gets. There are probably 95% of the football clubs in the world that will never experience an occasion as big as this. And so as fans, we're incredibly lucky, and we've got to enjoy it as best as we can. Lap it up, take in every moment, whether you're going to be at the Emirates, whether you're going to be watching from afar, wherever you're going to be, make an occasion of it. Sit down, chill out as much as you can. Pour yourself a lovely drink. If you want to watch it with fans, watch it with friends. Watch it with friends. Like, just make sure you lap it up and take it in, because tonight it's special. And as I said right at the top, whatever happens, it's only going to be half time. But we do have an opportunity to set ourselves on our way. Do I think it's going to be like the Real Madrid first leg, where we literally, I thought, performed impeccably well before coming out in the second half and completely blowing them out of the water? No. I think PSG are a much better side all round. I think they're a much better unit. I also think that with PSG, they're probably going to compromise a little bit on their style of play. Now, I know there'll be people out there that push back against that opinion and say, no way. PSG have one way of playing, etc., etc. They'd be stupid not to be just a touch more pragmatic. And I think that you're going to end up with a much cagier affair probably than some are expecting. I think you're going to get two teams that, yes, want to go on and win this and want to go and make their mark and all the rest of it. But also you're going to get two teams that acknowledge that it's only half time. And, in a semi-final stage, there's going to be more nerves than there was in the quarterfinals, etc., etc. And it's going to be, I think, my prediction is a low scoring game, actually. I'm going to go for the famous old 1-0 to the Arsenal. I know people will say there's no way we keep a clean sheet against that attack. I think we can. I think if we manage them right, I think if we keep them at arm's length, I think if we set up with that mid-block that I've been talking about in the build-up to the game, I think that's the right way to go. And I'm hoping that we can expose some of their weaknesses. And one of their big weaknesses is set pieces. And that's something that we've been very good at. Okay, we missed the threat of Gabriel, but we've still got plenty of players that can hurt you from a set-piece situation. And it's important, I think, that we make those count over the course of the two legs. Let's talk about the 2-11s then. And these are predicted 11s on my part. I don't know, of course, who's going to start for both sides for sure. But these are the 11s that I would predict. So I'd say for Arsenal, it'll be Raya in goal, Timber at right back, Saliba, Kivior and Lewis Skelly across the back, Rice, Merino and Odegaard in midfield with Martinelli left, Saka right, and Leandro Trossard through the middle. And then for PSG, I think it'll be Donnarumma in goal, Hakimi, Marquinhos, Pacho, and Nuno Mendes across the back. I think the midfield will be João Neves, Vitinha, and Fabian Ruiz, with Doué, Dembele, and Kvaratskhelia in attack. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if Bradley Barcola started in place of one of the other wingers, just because we know he's a bit more of a system player and he can be trusted just that little bit more defensively. If that is a decision that Luis Enrique takes, it will kind of feed into the narrative that I've just highlighted, which is actually, PSG, yes, they play a fantastic brand of football and they want to play their game everywhere they go, but they recognize that coming to the Emirates is not easy and they might feel the need to just slightly change things and tweak things and adjust things. But yeah, I think this is going to be an unbelievably good game of football if you're a neutral. Now, that kind of sounds like I'm contradicting myself a little bit, because I said I think it'll probably be quite cagey. I think it'll probably be quite low scoring. You don't always need a high scoring game to be fascinated by it or gripped by it. I've always kind of had this debate with people, friends of mine that maybe aren't as into the kind of details of the game as maybe I am, would say, "Oh, that was boring." And I'd say, "No, mate, that was fascinating. Watching two teams try to nullify each other tactically, sort of embroiled in this chess match where nobody was letting up, where there was no sort of failing of any defense and no sort of breakthrough made by any of the two attacking units." I think you're going to be gripped to this regardless. And we're going to be bringing you reaction to it, of course, on Wednesday morning. Tomorrow we'll be live at our usual time of 10 a.m. Can't wait for that. Hopefully we got a positive result to talk about and we can do a nice in-depth analysis of the game. But tonight I'm going as a fan. So if you see me, if you're around, come and say hello. I'll be in the North Bank, Block 6 tonight. I'm really looking forward to being there. I was there for the Crystal Palace game as well. I'm not reporting on the game tonight. So, really, really excited to be able to kind of take in that experience without having to remain professional at times and in moments of great difficulty. My prediction for this one, I'm going to go Arsenal 1, PSG 0, as I said. And I'd love to hear from you guys as well. What are your predictions? Have you got any questions, any thoughts ahead of the game? We'll take a really short pause. I'll run you through some of the key tactical battles that I think are going to take place tonight as a quick reminder. I'll take a couple of your questions and then I will sign out, because I can tell you I've got one hell of a busy day in front of me. Not that I'm complaining, but it just means everything is on a really tight schedule today. Back right after this. Okay, so we talked the other day about some of the key tactical battles. I think, obviously, PSG's right-hand side versus Arsenal's left-hand side is going to be really interesting. Doué will get forward if he plays. Dembele does like to drift out to that side as well. And Achraf Hakimi will get forward at every opportunity, you feel. So, for me, I expect PSG to apply that little bit of extra pressure on the unit, if you like, of Jakub Kiwior and Miles Lewis-Skelly. I think they will feel, and probably rightly so, that they will get more change out of those two than they would out of Saliba and Timber. Now, yes, Saliba's made a couple of mistakes recently, but he's still a top defender. He's still a top talent. And they, being a French club especially, will be well aware of how good William Saliba is. So I think they will look to come down our right-hand side. And so how we deal with that, for me, is going to be key and is going to be fascinating. We know that Martinelli's particularly strong in going back the other way, and I think that helps us. But if Merino plays left 8, is he going to go over and help? Is Declan Rice going to slide across from that kind of 6 position, if that's where he plays, to go and support those guys? How do we then protect ourselves against them coming down the other flank, where they've got equally as good players in Nuno Mendes and Kvicha Kvaratskhelia, if he's the one that starts there? It's going to be a game of chess, genuinely. But we've got things that they don't have. We've got a directness about us when we want to that I don't think they have. I think we will feel a lot more comfortable leaning on our defense in various stages of this tie than they will. Set pieces, as I mentioned already, I think Saka's ability to impact the game in the final third, Martinelli's running power. And do we play that kind of game of chicken at times and say to Gabby Martinelli, I don't care if Achraf Hakimi's coming forward, we'll deal with that threat in another way. Instead, you stay high and wide. And what does that then do? Does it take away the threat of Achraf Hakimi? Does he say, oh shit, I better stay back? or does he leave Marquinhos exposed? Do get into the midfield as much as you can in terms of physical power. What's Lewis Skelly going to do? Is he going to drift infield as much as he normally does, or is he going to be wary of PSG's threat? Is Kvaratskhelia going to get much out of Jurriën Timber, for example? Is Nuno Mendes going to have to rein it in a little bit so that Hakimi can go forward down the other side? Are they going to choose to sacrifice some of their threat on the left to bolster their threat on the right in order to hurt us on our left? There's so much to think about in this game. And, this is the kind of game where I wish I could watch it with a kind of bird's eye view so I can watch all the kind of tactical sort of battles and sort of all the tactical jousting taking place and unfolding. I think it's going to be a really, really intriguing game of football. Let me take a couple of your questions before I sign out. As I say, on a really, really tight schedule today because I've got a lot of work on different things in different pieces. So I'm going to have to wrap up by 10:30. But remember, if you want more content, if you're interested in the kind of ins and outs of this game, a little bit more that at sort of deeper level than what we've gone into today, go back to Friday's episode with Adrian Clark and the episode that we released on Sunday. They are available to you. Samo says, do you think PSG will be brazen with their fullbacks tonight, knowing the threat we have with Saka and Gabby? I think that's going to be one of the keys to this game. I really do. I think that if they decide to play that way, it obviously bolsters their attacking threat, but it also weakens them quite a bit defensively. And I feel like, having watched what happened to Real Madrid, Luis Enrique will be mindful of the fact that they don't want to be in a position like Real Madrid were going into the second leg where, look, we felt nervy and we said it was possible that Real Madrid could produce the remontada because of who they are and their history and all the rest of it. But most people that weren't emotionally attached felt like Real Madrid were done after the first leg. So PSG don't want to be in that position. There's nothing worse than coming away from the first leg kicking yourself. So I don't think they'll be as brazen with their fullbacks as they have been in other games at other stages of the competition. I think what we've done to Real Madrid, it kind of serves us in two ways, right? So the first way is that people now respect us that little bit more, which means that we're in people's heads and we become a more difficult opponent overall. But I also think where we've been talking about teams coming onto us and that suiting us, I think what happens when you go and thrash Real Madrid the way we did is that teams go, you know what, maybe we shouldn't play our game 100%. Maybe we play it 60%, 70%. And that maybe works against us. So there's two ways of framing that, really. There's two ways of looking at it. Rumble with a general question just on the kind of format of the Champions League says, do you think they're trying to butter us up with the Super League as they've used this format? I'm a fan of it. I can't lie. I've enjoyed it. I got to be honest. I've enjoyed it. There's a few tweaks I would make. Like, I don't like the fact that we finished well above Real Madrid and PSG, and we have the perceived disadvantage of playing the second legs away from home. I don't think that's fair. So I think there are certain adjustments and tweaks that need to be made. But generally, I got to be honest, I've enjoyed the new format. I really, really have. Right, I'm going to leave it there, guys. Sorry for the sort of slightly rushed episode, but we're going to be back tomorrow. Might bring you some instant reaction tonight, depending on what time I get home and depending on how things go. Stay tuned for loads coming over the next couple of days. The fallout to this game will rumble on for a few days, I feel. I'll see you all very, very soon. Until the next one, take care of yourselves and have a great day. Up the Arsenal. And as I say, my prediction is famous old 1-0 to the Arsenal. Do it for Super Kev. Speak to you all soon.